Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Today is, Saturday, the 21st?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see, where are we going to start here? Okay, so everybody, I guess, should know by now that my focus is the kingdom of Yah. And being that my focus, I believe that the focus of Messiah was also the same thing. So that's the reason why I focus there as well. Now, I've talked a little bit before about several things, but today we're going to talk about kingdom culture. A lot of people don't really understand that the kingdom that Yah has put together has a culture. You know, it is a nation. Even though it's not necessarily an earthly nation, it is a nation. And can you see? Not really. I don't know if we can turn this. Sorry, I didn't set this up, so.
You can repeat what's on it.
Okay, I will. Kingdom culture. Every kingdom has a culture. The culture of a kingdom is dictated by its king. The king sets the norms of conduct and communication. All right? So, Yah, being a king, he decides for his kingdom whatever's going to be done there. The people in the kingdom don't. He's the king. He has the ability to do that. All right, let's go down one. See if I can figure out how to easily navigate this. All right, so kingdom culture. If you have heeded the call of the gospel, the good news, and have entered into the kingdom, the reign of Yah, it is your responsibility, I got of there, so I need to change that, to learn the culture of your new kingdom. In fact, I'm going to go and change that now, if I can. Will it allow me? Yes. Oh, you know, I'm like that.
You're being recorded.
Yes, I am. I'm being myself. I gotta be myself anywhere I go. Okay. So let me clean this up. All right. Let's just go on to the next one. All right. To heed the call. Okay. There is, I come from a background where I started off in everything in the King James Version. So I have a lot of reference back to King James. And the reason why is because most of the tools and most of my study is done in King James. And, you know, your Strong's numbers, your topical Bibles, your lexicons usually have that as kind of a basis for it. But for our reading, we're going to do in the Scriptures version 2009. All right, heeding the call. I'd like somebody to read Matthew chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Okay, we're going to need 3 readers, all right? Somebody's going to read Matthew chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Matthew chapter 4, verse 23 and 24. And Mark chapter 1, verse 14 and 15. Who'll be my first reader? Okay, Matthew chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Matthew chapter 4, verse 23 and 24. And Mark chapter 1, verse 14 and 15. Okay, please read.
And in those days, Yochanan the immerser came proclaiming in the wilderness of Yehuda and saying, "Repent, for the reign of the heavens has come near."
All right. So if you were to read this, and I'm going to say probably most of the world out there has King James for reference. If you were reading in King James, you would see instead of the word reign, it would be the word kingdom. Okay? So when we're talking about kingdom, we're talking about the reign of Yah, not only in the world, but in our lives. Who's going to read Matthew chapter 4, verse 23 and 24? All right.
And Yeshua went about all Galilee, teaching in their congregations and proclaiming the good news of the reign, and healing every disease and every bodily weakness among the people. And news of him went out to all Syria, and they brought to him all who were sick, afflicted, with various diseases and pains, and those who were demon-possessed, and the epileptic, and the paralytic, and he healed them.
All right, so we have the words good news of the reign. So that would be gospel of the kingdom in King James. So the word good news is translated in the New Testament from the word euangelion, which means to proclaim, publish, herald a message. And kingdom obviously refers to a reign. It refers to a not only the time that a king rules, but the area that a king rules and the rules he puts in place. Those are all a part of kingdom. All right, Mark chapter 1, verse 14 and 15. We'll read that.
And after Yohanan was delivered up, Yeshua came to Galilee, proclaiming the good news of the reign of Elohim, and saying, the time has been filled, and the reign of Elohim has come near. Repent and believe in the good news.
Okay, very good. So we have similar words. These are all similar passages in the gospel accounts. So we have the good news, the gospel of the kingdom being preached, not only by John the Baptist, Yohanan the Immerser, but we also have Messiah doing the same thing. And you'll see in just a minute that there's a really crucial reason for this. So let's go to our next scripture. Okay, this is going to be Luke chapter 4, verse 14 through 21. Who would like to read that for me? Luke chapter 4, verse 14 through 21. Okay, thank you.
And Yeshua returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee, and news of him went out through all the surrounding country. He was teaching in the congregations, being praised by all. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and according to his practice he went into the congregation on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Yeshayahu was handed to him, and having unrolled the scroll, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of Yahweh is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring the good news to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to send away crushed ones with a release, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh. And having rolled up the scroll, he gave it back to the attendants and sat down. And the eyes of all the congregation were fixed upon him, and he began to say to them, today this scripture has been filled in your hearing.
Amen. All right. So we have here Messiah reading a portion of the scroll of Isaiah. All right. And in this particular part, the beginning of it is, the Spirit of Yah is upon me because he has anointed me to bring or to preach the good news to the poor. So this word would be basor in Hebrew, but it's the same word as translated in the New Testament as euangelion. So same word, same idea of it being a heralded message. And this message, it turns out that obviously Isaiah only had a glimpse of what was going to be done by Messiah several hundred years later, but it turned out that Messiah preached about the gospel of the kingdom of Yah. All right? All right, so not only do we have a call, that call is called the gospel, the good news, but we also have something that we have to do in response to this call. I'd like somebody to read Matthew chapter 11, verse 11 through 12, and Luke chapter 16, verse 14 through 17. I'd like to read.
What was the first one?
Matthew chapter 11, verse 11 and 12. Luke chapter 16, verse 14 through 17.
Okay, Matthew
Yes.
says, truly, truly, I say to you, among those born of women, there has not risen one greater than Yochanan the Immerser. Yet the least one in the reign of the heavens is greater than he. And from the days of Yochanan the Immerser till now, the reign of the heavens is violated, and the violent seize it.
All right. And Luke chapter 16, verse 14 through 17. Who would like to read that?
And the Pharisees, who loved silver, also heard all this, and were sneering at him. So he said to them, "You are those who declare yourself righteous before men, but Elohim knows your hearts, because what is highly thought of among men is an abomination in the sight of Elohim. The Torah and the prophets are until Yohanan. Since then the reign of Elohim is being announced, and everyone is doing violence upon it. And it is easier for the heaven and the earth to pass away than for one tittle of the Torah to fall."
Amen. All right. So we have Messiah talking about John the Baptist, and he says that, one, there's nobody greater than he is that is born of women, but he came and he started something, and that was called preaching the gospel of the kingdom. We just saw that in Matthew chapter 3 just a minute ago. All right? And then in Luke chapter 16, he says, "Since then, the reign of Elohim is being announced, and everyone is doing violence upon it." I don't think this is a great translation here, but the idea here is that Messiah has come and he's opened the kingdom. You know, if you want to look at it in terms of one of the parables that Messiah taught, he talked about a great net going out and pulling in every type of fish, the clean and the unclean. All right? And in that type of scenario, we have people pressing violently themselves into the kingdom, violently placing themselves under the reign of Yah. And the reason why this particular terminology is so important is that it's active. It is not a passive idea. It's something that you got to struggle through. And anybody who's walked this walk as we are, living in the time and the age that we live in, it's a daily struggle. And every day, sometimes minute by minute, sometimes second by second, we have to force ourselves under the reign of Yah. Because we have a flesh, you know. Sometimes it wants to wiggle off the altar when it's supposed to be being sacrificed. You know, that's the problem with having a living sacrifice. Sometimes it wants to wiggle itself off the altar and not die. But that's what we have to do. We have to literally die daily to stay in this walk. It's not a prayer that you pray on the altar one time, one day, and you're done. This ain't it. This is not that walk. This is not that journey. This is a day-by-day journey, and we all have to struggle through it. We all have to violently seize it. And if we slack up, you know, it's kind of like being in a river. You know, if you're in a boat and the river's taking you downriver, the minute you stop paddling, you're backing up. And that's how this walk is. We have to stay constantly paddling forward. Sometimes we got to, you know, put all of our effort into it just to get an inch of forward movement. But if we don't, we're moving backwards. All right? All right. It's your responsibility. You know, Yah is good, and he puts everything before us. But if we won't take what he gives us and do what he says to do with it, it does nobody any good. So I'd like somebody to read Matthew chapter 6, verse 31 through 34, and Luke chapter 12, verse 29 through 34. Okay? Matthew chapter 6, 31 through 34. Who has that? Please read.
Do not worry then, saying, "What shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For all these the nations seek for, and your heavenly Father knows that you need all these. But seek first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these shall be added to you. Do not then worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow shall have its own worries. Each day has enough evil of itself."
Very good. Who has Luke chapter 12, verse 29 to 34? Please read.
And do not seek what you shall eat or what you shall drink, and do not keep worrying, for the Gentiles of the world seek all these, and your Father knows that you need these. But seek the reign of Elohim, and all these shall be added to you. Do not fear, little flock, because your Father did not delight to give you the rain. Sell your possessions and give in kindness. Make yourselves purses which do not grow old, a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief does come near nor moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart shall be also.
So once we've heard the call that the kingdom is here, it's available to enter. Once we have entered in, it's our responsibility. We see here it says, seek first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness. It's two parts. Not only is there a seeking to be under his rule, but you got to know what the rules are. And that's where Torah comes in. And if you notice here, it talks about that, let's see. Torah is tied to this. So if we don't actively not only do what he says, and the first part of that obviously has to be finding out what he did say. It's our responsibility to get into Scripture. It's our responsibility. He had Moses to write it for a reason, so that it would be passed down from generation to generation and saved even for us today. It's our responsibility to get in there and learn. And when we come to congregation and we hear Torah read, that is such a precious thing. I'm going to say 90 to 99% of the places that you could go out there, you're not going to hear Torah read every Sabbath. It's sad. You might hear a good speech or an inspirational message, or you might hear a verse or two here or there, but you're not going to hear Torah read in the synagogue. This is modern-day synagogue on the Sabbath. It's very sad. Even some of the messianic places that I have visited in the past, they will highlight certain things and they may mention certain things, but they won't actually read it in your hearing. And I mean, it's something that has endeared me to this particular place, because I know that every Sabbath I can come here and hear the Scripture. All right. So culture. In culture, we have two things, and today we're only going to go through one of those things. One is the code of conduct, and for us, Torah is our code of conduct. We don't make up our own. It's given to us. It's not every man do what's right in his own sight. It's do what's right in Yah's sight. That's it. And then, of course, another important part of culture, and I'll go through this in a future message, is language. I'm a firm believer that if you don't at least make an attempt to learn the Hebrew language, you're just going to not understand so much of what Scripture has to say. The translators have done as best as they could to put what is written in one language into our language so that we can start to get it. But we're not supposed to stay there. If you want to understand what Yah has said, you have to read it in the language that he gave it. And there's so much, you could take one Hebrew word and make a sentence or sometimes even a paragraph out of it, because there's so much that is encapsulated in science. We have something that's called elegance. Elegant is something that does the job with the smallest amount of effort. And that's what Hebrew is as a language. It is compact and it is so full of meaning that when you try to bring it into another language, you can only bring a piece of the meaning. And that's why when you go through some of the lexicons and some of the dictionaries, you'll have one Hebrew word and you'll have maybe 10, 20, 30 different words that one Hebrew word can be translated into in English. And in that particular situation, well, how do you know which one of those to take? But if you know the language, if you are in the culture, then you'll know. All right? Let's go to the next one. Oh, what did it do? How did I do that? All right, so we're going to go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 18 through 20. Now, in our king establishing his culture, he's done it through people. He has, first of all, picked Adam, the first man. Then he went through the line of Adam to Noah as the next man, and then through the line of Noah to Abraham, and then to Israel, and then to us. So he uses a representative for his culture. He uses a representative for his reign. When the earth was first created, he created Adam to rule and to reign over the earth. If you read it, that's what it says. You can go back to Genesis 1, 2, and 3 for yourself. We don't have to do that now. But he created the earth, and then he put a representative of himself. He made Adam in his likeness and in his image. He placed his knowledge in Adam. That's how Adam was able to name all of the animals. If Adam had no knowledge, you can't name something if you don't know anything. So Adam was a highly intelligent man. His intelligence came straight from Yah himself. So here we go, a few thousand years, and we have Noah. I'd like somebody to read Genesis chapter 6, verse 18 through 22 for me. Please read. Thank you.
And I shall establish my covenant with you, and you shall come unto the ark, you and your sons and your wife, and your sons' wives, with you. And of all the living...
Come up here and read it. Come up here and read it. I want everybody here. Start from the beginning.
And I shall establish my covenant with you, and you shall come unto the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. And of all the living of a flesh, 2 of each you are to bring into the ark to keep them alive with you, a male and a female. Of the birds after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and of all creeping creatures of the ground after their kind, 2 of each are to come to you to keep them alive. As for you, take of all food that is eaten and gather it to yourself. And it shall be food for you and them for you and for them. And Noah did according to all that Elohim commanded him, so he did.
Excellent. Thank you so much for reading. That was fantastic. My lovely assistant here. All right. So, Yah said that I'm going to establish my covenant. Covenant is a really special word. I'm going to go into that in a minute. But the way that Noah responded to the covenant is a clue. Noah did according to all that Elohim commanded. Okay? Let's go to the next one so we can learn a little bit about covenant. All right. The word covenant in Hebrew is the word berit. All right? It's translated as a compact or as a confederacy or a league or a covenant or an agreement, but it really means to cut. And how does that get into anything? Well, we're going to learn in a minute through what's going to happen with Abraham in a minute. But in the making of a true covenant, unfortunately, something's got to die. Covenants are made, true covenants are made in blood. And this is borne out in the cutting of a covenant, where they would actually take an animal and they would cut it in half, put the two sides, and the people who are to keep this covenant would walk through the blood between those animals, signifying that my commitment is that I will keep this covenant to my death, and you can do to me what was done to these animals if I don't keep it. That's serious. That's what it signifies. So it's not just simply an agreement. It is not simply a confederacy or a league or an agreement to do this or that. It is an agreement with penalties. And in the case of Noah, everything died except for everything that was in that boat with Noah. Noah and the Father passed through that covenant together. A lot of people don't think about it that way, but a lot of things died that day. The great deep broke up. The gates in heaven broke up in the Shamayim, and everything was flooded. I believe that the flood covered the entire world. I don't believe it was a local flood or some of the other stuff that you'll hear. I believe everything died in that flood. And as a response, let's go to the next part. Okay. I'd like somebody to read Genesis chapter 15, verse 1 through 6. I'd like somebody to get that ready for me. So, as a response to that covenant, after everything died, what did Yah say? He said the significance or the signature, the symbol of that covenant would be the rainbow. Now, of course, we've got, heathens that have taken that symbol and adopted it to something else. But going back to the original of what that symbol is, that's something that Yah did for us. He put a bow in the heavens. He put a bow in the Shamayim for us to be able to see. I typically marvel at him when I see him, because I remember this. I remember that it is a sign of the covenant and that it's still good today. He promised that he'd never do it again. Now, destruction can come in many ways, don't get me wrong, but it won't be by a flood. All right. Okay, who's got Genesis chapter 15, verse 1 through 6 ready for me?
And after these events, the word of Yahweh came to Abraham in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield. Your reward is exceedingly great." And Abraham said, "Master Yahweh, what would you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eleazar the Damascus?" And Abraham said, "See, you have given me no seed, and see, no one is born in my house as my heir. And see, the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, This one is not your heir, but he who comes from your own body is your heir." And he brought him outside and said, look now towards the heaven, and count the stars if you're able to count them. And he said to him, "So are your seed." And he believed in Yahweh, and he reckoned it to him for righteousness.
All right. So we got this word again. We're supposed to seek first the kingdom of Yah and his righteousness. And we see the first person that we know of. I'm not saying that other people didn't do it before. I talked about other people being righteous as well. But it was the belief of Abraham that was reckoned to him for righteousness. But the key to Abraham's righteousness was not only his belief, it was his actions that showed his belief. Okay, let's continue in Genesis. This is Genesis chapter 15, verse 7 through 7 through 11. We're going to finish out this particular chapter in Genesis, so you guys can get ready for it. Who'd like to read 7 through 11? All right, you can come up again.
And he said to him, I am Yahweh, who brought you out of
Ur-Kasdim
to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, Master Yahuwah, whereby do I know that is possesses it?
Know that I possess it.
Possess it. And he said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer.
It's a female cow.
And a 3-year-old female goat. And a 3-year-old ram. And a turtle dove. And a young pigeon. And he took all of these to him, and cut them in the middle, and placed each half opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds. And the birds of prey came down on the
carcasses,
and Abraham drove them away.
Very good, thank you. All right, so we have the continuation of the story. So Abraham is talking to Yah, and he says, I don't have an heir. You know, I'm gonna have to take my servant, who I trust. He loved his servant, but his servant was not a true heir, and he wanted a true heir. And Yah comes to him and says, okay, this is how we're going to do this. I want you to go get a heifer, a goat, a ram, a turtle dove, and a pigeon. And I want you to slice them, well, all except for the birds. I want you to slice them in half, and I want you to place the pieces opposite each other. Okay? And it obviously took a little while for him to do this, because it's talking about the birds of prey coming down on the carcasses. So I'm pretty sure they had some circles up above where Abraham was at the time. And Abram, because he wasn't Abraham yet, Abram drove them away. So let's go to verse 12. Who's ready with verse 12 through 16 for me?
And it came to be, when the sun was going down, that a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and see, a frightening great darkness fell upon him. And he said to Abram, know for certain that your seed, are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions.
Yeah, well, Jerry? William, I had to kill it and restart it, so I haven't researched again.
Now, as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace. You are to be buried at a good old age. Then in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the crookedness of the Amorites is not yet complete.
All right. So this is my proof that I use to say that Abram was a prophet. Not only did Yah speak to him, but Yah told him what would happen in the future. All right? And it says, it came to be when the sun was going down. So this was an all-day process. Not only did he have to get the cattle and kill the cattle and put the pieces in order, but Yah obviously took a little while because he waited until sundown. All right? So this is the starting of a new day. And he says, for certain that your seed will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs. Who does anybody know who that might be referring to? This is obviously way before Exodus happened. So who's being spoken of here? What group of people is that? Exactly. Who are the seed of Abraham? Israel. So this is a prophecy hundreds of years before there was an Israel. that they would go into a land that was not theirs. All right? And not only that, they'll be afflicted 400 years. That's a pretty exact number. Now, when we get to Exodus, we learn that it was approximately 430 years. But of that 430 years, they weren't slaves the entire 430 years. It said that in the process of time, there was a king that didn't know of the Hebrews coming into Egypt at the time, and they didn't honor them. So they started to oppress them at that point. All right, let's go on to the next thing. Genesis chapter 15, verse 17 to 21. Who has that ready? Please read. Thank you.
And it came to be when the sun went down and it was dark, that see a smoking oven and a burning torch passing between those pieces. On the same day Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, I have given this land to your seed, from the river of Mitzrayim to the great river, the river Euphrates. And the Kenite, and the Kenizzite, and the Cadmonite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Rephaim, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Girgashite, and the Jebusite.
Very good. So we have here a picture. It says a smoking oven and a burning torch passed between those pieces. Now, the significance of this is that Yah did this all by himself. He knew that Abram would not be able to fulfill this particular covenant, because obviously it would take place after Abram died. So Abram couldn't fulfill this covenant. So Yah took it upon himself and said, I've given you this land and to you and to your seed from the river in Egypt, Mitzrayim, okay, to the river Euphrates. Now, this is an arguable point, because Abraham had more seed than Israel. Okay? He had 2 sons. Well, actually he had more than that, because after his wife died, he married again, and he had more sons and daughters. So the children of Abram today are actually living in that land, literally from the river in Egypt to the river Euphrates. That actual prophecy is actually fulfilled today. It's not all Israel, but it's all seed of Abraham. Unfortunately, some of those seed got a little off, and they started following another God, another Yah, and eventually Yah is going to fulfill his word, and he's going to bring this whole world back under his control in his kingdom. But until it happens, we can deal with it. He's still in control. All right, Genesis chapter 26, verse 1 through 5. Who'd like to read that? All right, thank you.
And there was a famine in the land, beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Ger. And Yahweh appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell you of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. For unto you and unto your seed I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath which I swore unto Abraham for your fathers. And I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and will give unto your seed all these lands, and in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, my laws, and Isaac dwelt in Gilead.
Amen. Okay, so we have Abraham being spoken of here. So Abram is long gone, and we have Isaac, all right? And we have Jacob, all right? The days of the patriarchs. He tells them, there's a famine, it's all under my control, I got this, I got a place set for you, go down to Egypt. And the significance of this, it says, this is being done because Abraham obeyed my voice. He guarded my charge, my commandments, my laws, and my Torah. So Torah has been around since before Moses. If there was any question, this is it. This tells you. The commands, the culture, the way of doing things that Yah has decided has been around long before Moses, even though that's when it was written down. That's when it was made to a mass of people, not just to one man and his family. If you look at Adam, the covenant was first with Adam, and then his wife, and then Seth, because of everything that happened with Cain and Abel. And then you had Moses. Noah. God established his covenant with Noah and his sons. All right? And then we come down to Abraham. He established a covenant with him and his sons. And now they're going into Egypt. All right? So it's important for us to learn that kingdom culture and Torah go together. There is no kingdom culture without Torah. This is where Yah has sat down and written, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. This is my kingdom, I make the rules. Just that simple. All right? Exodus chapter 2, verse 23 through 25. Now, this is the start. This is how this slavery thing started in Egypt. It didn't start off that way. You know, their brother was one of the high people in their particular nation. They were well thought of as people. They had their own little plot of land where they could live out their lives and their existence. Yah had already taken care of that. But there came a day. Who's going to read Exodus chapter 2, verse 23 and 20 through 25? Go for it.
And it came to be, after these many days, that the sovereign of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, died, and the children of Israel groaned because of the slavery. And they cried out, and their cry came up to Elohim because of the slavery. And Elohim heard their groaning, and Elohim remembered his covenant with Abraham, and with Isaac, and with Jacob. And Elohim looked on the children of Israel, and Elohim knew.
All right. So this is the power of covenant. It transcends you. When you walk in righteousness, Yah is going to become sovereign over everything that concerns you throughout your generations. So it came to pass that somebody, the sovereign of Mitzrayim, he didn't recognize, he didn't take any special interest in the children of Israel, but God did. Elohim remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, with Yaakov, and Elohim looked on the children of Israel, and he knew. He saw what they were going through. He sees what we're going through today. Nothing that goes on with us today escapes his sight. His eyes look to and fro throughout this whole planet, looking for those who he can strongly support. And who can he strongly support? Those who are following him. Those who heed his commands, those who follow his Torah. He's going to come behind them, and he's going to assure their walk. All right? Let's go to the next thing. All right, Exodus. It's getting good now. Exodus chapter 19, verse 1 through 6. Who would like to read this for me? We're almost done here.
Exodus 19, 1 through 6.
Verse 1 through 6.
In the third month, after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, on this day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. For they set out from Rephidim and had come to the wilderness of Sinai, and they camped in the wilderness. So Israel camped there before the mountain. And Moshe went up to Elohim, and Yahweh called to him from the mountain, saying, This is what you are to say to the house of Yaakov, and declare to the children of Israel. You have seen what I did to the Mitzrites, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. And now, if you diligently obey my voice, and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for the earth is mine. And if you shall be to me the reign of priests in a set apart nation, those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel.
Okay. So, this is after they've come out of Egypt. This is the third new moon, all right? So this is 3 months later. Okay, they came out on a new moon. Well, actually, they were still in on the new moon, and by the time of the Passover, that's when they came out. So it's 2.5 months later, let's say. All right? And this is what you are to say to the house of Yaakov. Declare to the children of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Mitzrites, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And now if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant. This covenant is the covenant that came through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. This was not yet the covenant with Moses. This is before then. Take a look at where we are in Exodus. Actually, it's it's Exodus chapter 20 where he starts to give us commandments. But the covenant is confirmed here before he gives a command. And he says to you, and you shall be to me a reign of priests. That word reign is kingdom again. And a set apart nation. This is speaking to the kingdom that was to come, that was David and Solomon's kingdom. Now, this kingdom is not the kingdom of God, of Yah. It's the kingdom of Israel. The kingdom of Yah is an eternal kingdom. Does not have a beginning or an end. He is an eternal king. But it's talking about a nation of people being joined to his kingdom here on this earth. And that started with the children of Israel. Unfortunately, it didn't continue that way. Obviously, there's no kingdom in Israel today. That's how we know it's not Yah's kingdom completely, because it wouldn't have a beginning or an end if it did. But it at least talks about this group of people that were galvanized under Yah's reign to be his people and to be a kingdom. Let's see. All right. Who would like to read Exodus chapter 24, verse 1 through 3? Now, this is after pronouncing all of the commandments and a lot of the dictates that our king has given us. So we just took a snapshot before the commandments were given. Now we're just after the commandments were given. Who would like to read Exodus 24, verse 1 through 3?
And to Moshe he said, Come up to Yahweh, you and Aaron and Naab and Ahiu and 70 of the elders of Israel, and you shall bow yourselves from a distance. But Moshe shall draw near to Yahweh by himself, and let them not draw near, nor let the people go up with him. And Moshe came and related to the people all the words of Yahweh, and all the right rulings. And all the people answered one voice and said, all the words which Yahweh has spoken, we shall do.
Confirmation of the covenant. So Moshe drew near by himself, and then he got all the information that Yah wanted him to have, and then he related to the people the words. There was a person that Yah used to deal with the rest of the people. Yah didn't deal directly with Israel himself. He always had a mediator. And Moshe came and related to the people all the words of Yah and all the right rulings. I like this. I don't like this. I want this. I don't want this. This is my kingdom. I make the rules. Very simple. And they said with one voice, all the words which Yah has spoken, we shall do. And that's what we have to do today. This is coming under the reign of Yah. Whatever you said, I'm going to do it. Okay, Exodus chapter 24, verse 4 through 7. Who'd like to read that for me? Please read.
And Moshe wrote down all the words of Yahweh and rose up early in the morning and built a slaughter place at the foot of the mountain and 12 standing columns for the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent young men of the children of Israel, and they offered ascending offerings and slaughterings of peace offerings to Yahweh of both. And Moshe took half the blood and put it in basins, and half the blood he sprinkled on the slaughter place. And he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. And they said, all that Yahweh has spoken we shall do and obey.
All right. Remember what I said a minute ago? When there's a covenant, something's going to die. We see it right here. Covenants are made in blood. That a lot of people don't realize that this is the significance of a marriage covenant. Without being graphic, as a part of the consummation of that marriage, in the case of a virgin, okay, there's blood spilled. There's a reason. There's a purpose. This is not done in a vacuum. It all ties together. So it's a true covenant. So Moshe took half the blood and put it in the basin, and half the blood he sprinkled on the slaughter place. And he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. All that Yah had spoken, we shall do and obey. They confirmed that they would take part in this covenant. Okay? Exodus chapter 24, verse 8 through 11. And we're coming to a close here. Who's got this one for me? It's going to be our final scripture.
And Moshe took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, see the blood of the covenant which Yahweh has made with you concerning all these words. And Moshe went up also, Aaron and Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And he saw the Elohim of Israel, and under his feet like a paved work of sapphire stone, and like the heavens for brightness. Yet he did not stretch out his hand against the chiefs of the children of Israel. And they saw Elohim, and they ate and drank.
All right. I don't know if I'm just the only one blown away by this. This is the most fantastic, one of the most fantastic things I've seen in the whole of Scripture. This was so important that literally they showed up in heaven. There's no sapphire stone on the ground on this earth. This was not here on this planet. I don't know what you're thinking, but this under his feet like a paved work of sapphire stone, and like unto the heavens for brightness. They were caught up to the stage of heaven itself. And it wasn't just Moses' time. It wasn't just Moshe. They saw the Father and lived. Like I said, I don't know if it's just me, but it actually, this is the importance of our feasts. They are appointed times. There are times that we, as Yah's people, are set apart to eat and to drink before Him. This snapshot is a representation of what we do throughout our year. And at some point in time, we will be doing this before Him, but we're looking forward to that. Kingdom culture is what I'm talking about. So, just to wrap it up a little bit. Yah, He's the creator of everything. He decides what happens with everything. And for whatever reason, He's given mankind the ability to disobey Him. If I was the creator of everything, I'm not sure I would do it that way. I think I'd have a bunch of robots. Everything would be bound down to me all day and all night. Not because I'm just, megalomaniac, but I'm not Him. I don't have the level of wisdom that He has. I'm speaking as a man. Okay? So that's how we know He's not a man. He has given us the ability to disobey Him. But He's also given us the ability to obey Him and to know what He has to say. And for those who decide to do that, He makes a covenant with them. And this covenant has gone through the eons of time, and it's always through a person. We have Messiah today. We enter into that covenant, into that kingdom, into that culture through Messiah. There's no other way. None of us are clean enough, wise enough, strong enough, smart enough. There you go. We can't do it on our own. So He needed a bridge to get us from where we are to where we're supposed to be. And Messiah is that bridge. When we submit to Messiah, when we say to Messiah, "You are our King," when we develop the mentality of, "Yet though you slay me, yet will I serve you," and He truly becomes our master and our King, we cross over. The name, title, Hebrew, in Hebrew, in that language, means one who has crossed over. It's not just, a name in and of itself. It actually has a meaning. It means one who was over here, and there might be a river, whatever, who has crossed over to the other side. There are two kingdoms here. There are the kingdoms of this world. There's the kingdom of Satan, which is on one side. We have Messiah in the middle, and we have the kingdom of Yah on the other side. And we use Messiah as the vehicle so that we can cross over from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of His dear Son. And when we cross over, we don't make our own rules. We're given what we need to do. It's laid out before us. Now, in closing, there's another parable that Messiah gives us. And he talks about a man who's invited into a wedding. And in this culture, when there was a wedding, everyone that came to the wedding was given a garment to wear. And you participated in all of the festivities. Well, there was this one time where there's this one man who didn't put on the wedding garment. He kept his own clothes on. Now, maybe he didn't know the culture. I don't know. Maybe he didn't think that whatever was provided for him was good enough. Maybe he thought his clothes were better than the ones that were provided for him. I can't tell you what this man's mentality was. All I can tell you is that he was given garments to wear, and he didn't wear them. Well, the master of this wedding comes, the father of the groom comes, and he says, "Friend, weren't you given a garment? Why aren't you wearing it?" And it is a affront. It is a slander in our culture, kingdom culture, for you not to put this garment on. And what happened to this man? He was cast out. And that place where the casting out is, it says that there's weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. So I'm going to let you guys guess where he went. So it is not for us, and I believe that in this particular illustration by Messiah that the garments were righteousness. I believe that. I'm not going to develop that today. But as we walk in the righteousness that has been given to us, seeking first the kingdom and righteousness that has been given to us, we are allowed to stay inside Yah's kingdom. So my admonishment is, if whoever's listening, if you have not heard the gospel, the good news, that the kingdom is open and that it is available for you to enter in, I admonish you to enter in. And if you are in the kingdom, I admonish you to put on your wedding garments. Seek the righteousness that Yah has delivered to us so that you can stay and not be cast out. Yahweh bless.